Hello, and welcome to another episode of Animals in the Bible. Today we'll be going through a very famous story, if you know anything about animals in the Bible, the famous story of Balaam's talking donkey. But let's get into it, and we may explore this episode, come back to it again several times, because I think it's a very interesting thing, and we can explore all different aspects. But there's something I really want to touch on, so let's read. Then God's anger was aroused because he went, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants with him. Now, when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the road. The angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the vineyards with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed herself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the walls, so he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place when there was no way to turn to right hand or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam's anger was aroused, and he struck the donkey with his staff. And then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have abused me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you." So the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey, on which I have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever disposed to do this to you?" And he said, "No." And the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to stand against you because of your way perverse before me. The donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely I would have also killed you by now, and let her live." And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned, for I did not know you were in the way against me. Well, therefore, if it displeases you, I will turn back." Then the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but only the word I speak to you that you shall speak." So Balaam went with the prince of Balak. And that may be it for now. But I really wanted to get in the story in terms of understanding our relationship, in terms of how we view um, both animals and other people. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because so we have a story where this animal who has uh, revealed to, once we get to the talking portion, just the faithfulness of the animal toward Balaam. And Balaam takes it out wantingly and with no justification upon a donkey that has served him well. And in fact, the donkey protects Balaam from being struck down and killed. And so this speaks to the necessity to care well for animals, the necessity to, I think, even listen to animals. I think that there are things in the world, and we'll get into it maybe more in another episode, but the usefulness in animals in understanding how they can benefit us, provide us with all of our needs, both physical and even be a somehow a discerner of things. And we're going to see more of this as we explore more of animals. But but more specifically, just in terms of the servant nature of animals. It says even in Deuteronomy that animals are to rest on the Sabbath just like any other person. So there is a benefit to be served by treating animals well, to giving them the respect that are due, to see them as more than just a thing to use, but as a being that somehow is connected to the world and thus has an obligation to rest as well and not to work, and that God provides for animals, right? And so we see all this, and it's really pretty amazing how much we are going to see this repeated over and over again. But so we have in this Old Testament the number of commands to take care well of one's beasts. And so one of the things that um, became very important to the Israelites was their livestock. It became a major, of course, source for living, and was, of course, a major source for living for most of human, again, history. The need to take care of animals well in order to um, get something from them, whether it was food or meat or uh, travel or carrying things, right? And so in this story, we see the need to take care of animals well and to maybe even stop and consider uh, how we are treating animals. But I want to move forward, and we're going to look at two passages quickly from Luke. And when I so here we are. We're commanded not to abuse animals, to give them their due and rest, and to consider well, and that and again, there's also all sorts of Old Testament passages about the taking about not taking animals that don't belong to you, all that sort of stuff. Um, and we'll get into those maybe more next time. But so here we are. Balaam is proven himself an unkind, unjust master to his donkey. But yeah, that in a sense reflects the nature of what he is also being asked to do in the curse upon the children of Israel. The abuse that he takes beyond what he has been given as a prophet, as supposedly one speaking from God, even though he is no true servant of Yahweh. And yet he has not duty and obligation to be a well spoken representative of God, even in a foreign nation. And we see his abuse of that and his willingness to go out of the way to get what he wants. And in the end, if you know the rest of the story, is forced to speak only what God requires of him. And God forced him to open his eyes to even the abuse he was showing even to his own animal. But if we go to Luke chapter 13, starting in verse 15, I think, well, maybe not starting in verse 15, but we're going to go to at least Luke 13 and see if I can find the exact passage. Here we are. We're actually going to start in the previous verse, verse 14. I don't hope that didn't do anything. Anyway, but the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. And he said to the crowd, "There are 6 days in which men ought to work. Therefore come and be healed on them, and not on the Sabbath day." Then the Lord answered him and said, "Hypocrite, does not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it away to water it? So ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, when Satan is bound, think of it, for 18 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath?" And then we're going to go to Luke 14, so the very next chapter. And the lawyers said, and Jesus answering spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" But they kept silent. And he took him and healed him and let him go. And then he answered, saying, "Which of you, having a donkey and an ox that has immediately fallen into a pit, will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?" And they could not answer him regarding these things. So I want to speak to this because one of the things that we've become very sensitive to in our society is the treatment of animals. Again, and I think God is very sensitive to that too, as we'll explore more. But one of the things that we often has kind of become a very big thing in our culture is we're very sensitive in animals, but we aren't very sensitive to our fellow man. And what Jesus is pointing out is not that it's good, isn't good to water your donkey on the Sabbath or to rescue your donkey or ox who has fallen into a pit on the Sabbath. They're a benefit, they're good, and you don't want to see a animal in suffering, right? And it is a part of, and it was a big part of their assets as a society, but we would not let an animal suffer so unduly. The lawyers and the Pharisees and the scribes, they wouldn't do that. But they were so busy taking care of what they had, the even creature, that they failed to see how they were putting constraints on something even more greater, which was the people of Israel, and how much they had failed to benefit the people around them. Instead, they had become so desensitized to actual human need that they abandoned that. And Jesus really is pointing out, you're you're willing to even care for you're willing to care for your animals, which is good, but you're not really willing to take responsibility of one of my own children. And that tells how insensitive the Pharisees had become. And like, what were they gonna do? Were they gonna get to a point where even like animals were unlawful to help on the Sabbath? Or was this just about their own selfishness? It wasn't actually about benefiting, but rather making themselves appear holy and righteous by willing to pull their animals out of a ditch or take them to water, right? And yet they weren't willing to do those same things for the people around them. And unfortunately, we are kind of living in this sort of society that is kind of accepted that there's somehow a greater benefit of animals than there are of people. And as a guy who's very much into conservation, animal research, definitely opposes animal abuse on any level and wants to see us take better care of creation as a whole, as a society. I think that we have to be aware of other people's needs first and see that first and foremost. Um, so, and it's partially because our society has become so cynical about other people. But um, I was thinking about something today and feeling convicted about something, but the other day, and I won't go into the details for reasons, but just the need to reach out to, in small ways, to the people around us. And so I pray we would do that, that we would not be desensitized, because we can be desensitized to all sorts of suffering in the world and problems, and we can even look, and we might even find comfort in being relief to only those things that benefit us, whether it be our pet animals or just the way we view things, where animals are have better souls or something or whatever to um, us than the people around us, and that should not be. And so, just how we think about this can be hard to deal with, but I pray we would um, be sensitive to those around us more and more. We can't just be um, we can't just be sensitive to certain things. We have to be sensitive to all things. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be always worrying or always like on the edge of our seats all the time. And there's time for joy and stuff and all sorts of stuff. And we can't worry about everyone and everything all the time. But at least be open to the things that are going around you, and even people you may not even like, and be a benefit to them in some way. And also recognize that there are plenty of people in your life that maybe have been a benefit to you, but you haven't served in return. Like like Balaam's donkey, right? Someone who's been by you, uh, with you, protected you, guided you, but you haven't shown any love back, and you haven't shown kindness in return. So there's that as well. And so we must be careful how we deal with these things, and just be open to it, to open our eyes to the suffering going around us, and not to be so desensitized to it. Instead, look to ways we can be a help and a benefit, especially to the people around us. Animals are a great blessing from God, and I do believe that there are a special place for animals in the kingdom and all sorts of other stuff. But how much more for the people around us? And so, just think about that and consider how you can serve the people around you more than the things around you that are less important. That's all I have to say. Again, if you have want to subscribe, please like, please share if this was of benefit to you. And also, happy St. Patrick's Day. You can check out some of my St. Patrick stuff with Dormouse and my thoughts on St. Patrick in one of my drawing animal podcasts this past week. So if you want to haven't looked at that, be sure to look at that again as well. Check out my books, the Crazy Creatures series under the name Wesley Bear on Amazon, and just have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you all for listening to me talk about this stuff. And I just want to be encouragement. That's all. So you all have a wonderful day, and God bless.